So I'm fishing with my grandfather in northern Wisconsin. I'm 10 years old. Apropos of nothing, he looks at me and he says, Stephen, the only death you ever have to be afraid of is already behind you in your baptism. And he went on fishing. What do you do with that? You take it to ground zero, 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 ground zero.
Wednesday, tomorrow, sunny, high of 54, low of 31 degrees, winds at 11 miles per hour, so still windy, but a little bit less. Thursday, cloudy, the clouds come in the
Looking out the windows of our office on that beautiful fall day, September 11th, 2001, we noticed some smoke around the towers. Then someone asked, what's going on? And I said, well, maybe it's air from Jersey, trying to make a joke. When someone came in and said, turn on the radio, there's been an attack. And from that moment on, our lives changed, all of ours. We saw a plane come down the Hudson River later. I thought it was our Air Force scrambling. It turned out to be aimed right into the second tower. Both towers lit up. At noon, high noon, we gathered at the Interchurch Center where our offices were for prayer. What do you say? I shared the 23rd Psalm, and then I said to the folks, 4 your prayer, name the names downtown of those you don't know where they are. And to hear those names come at me through strangled voices, and to add two of my own names, Rachel, Janet, my wife and my daughter, was to understand how our lives had changed. We didn't know till later that night that my wife and daughter were okay. The phones were out, and things started to happen. We started calling people up we knew were in the towers. I started calling churches around in Manhattan saying, open your doors, be ready for the people. And things happened. Fire engines raced downtown. One of our chaplains, a firefighter chaplain who was a pastor in Brooklyn, ran across the Brooklyn Bridge, asked, what can I do? And they said, please use your oil and anoint any of those firefighters who would like that remembrance of their baptism. And so he did. He stood at the tower and anointed those rescue workers. And people coming down those smoky stairs later remembered those brave men and women with glistening foreheads as they rode up to rescue. It was Jacob's ladder with angels ascending and descending, and God at both sides of the ladder. One of our members, our congregation in the Bronx, made it out of the 50th floor of the second tower, filled with dust and grime, and she made her way back home in the early evening to her apartment in the Bronx. And she saw on the corner people standing around. She said they were like sheep without a shepherd. She said, I'm not going to just stand here. She ran up into her apartment. She got a fistful of candles. She came down, handed the candles out, lit them. They started singing, Precious Lord, take my hand. They did that every night for a couple of weeks. And their neighbors, who had to go downtown every day for recovery, said, please don't stop doing that. We can bear what we're doing if we know that you're praying for us. In 1,000 ways, those things happened all through the metropolis. Finally, a couple days later, I was at ground zero. I didn't want to be there. I thought I'd be in the way. It was a horrible, horrible, obscene sight. And people noticed my collar. And they would come up to me, Father, can I tell you what I saw? Father, will you pray for me? Father, where the hell is God? And then thinking of faces of those I loved that I knew were buried in that obscene pile. And then what my grandfather told me came to me as a gift. We are all buried already. Do you not know that you have been buried with Christ by baptism unto death? So that as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, you too might walk in newness of life. This was not an answer. This was something we carried within us. This was something we looked for, a spiritual mooring in a time when all hell had broken loose. Where was God on September 11th? God was those people plowing through that obscene pile, and every time a piece of humanity was brought out, hats off, the crowd gentling, the respect for life profound. God was in the small details of sharing chocolate chip cookies at St. Paul Chapel, of hearing each other's stories, of quietly weeping and a hand would come on someone's shoulder. God was there in all of the goodwill that was unleashed right after this happened. The goodwill we squandered. God is with us now, today, in this pandemic. And all of us have our own little ground zeros every day. What are yours? About a year later, a documentary came out. 2 French filmmakers were filming inside of a firehouse. It was a day like any other day, a firehouse right downtown, around the corner from Ground Zero. And as they filmed and as we watched it, there was such a heaviness to it. As they got up, shared their bagels, were joshing with the kind of male camaraderie that happens in a firehouse. But we knew what was waiting for them, and it gave every breath they took an incredible heaviness. The alarm sounded. They left to go. Then the film, the clump of falling bodies. Chaplain Judge, a firefighter chaplain, being carried out, who had been killed. And then we knew that they were rushing to what we knew was probably their death. And we knew what happened. And that's what gave watching this so much weight. My cousin reads mystery novels by reading the last chapter first. Why do you do that? People would ask him, and he'd say, well, I want to know how the story ends because it makes a difference in how I read the plot. That is our hope. We know how the story ends. We know Christ our Lord is not buried on Good Friday on that ground zero. Christ our Lord is risen, and knowing the end of the story makes a difference in how we read the plot, even the plot of our everyday lives. So in memory of that time, but with love towards you today, God bless you.